prayer.
Performing, not conversing. Islam was a charade.
Abu Lahab would place a goat's stomach on him. Sometimes when food was being cooked in the courtyard, he and his wife would throw filth at the cooking pot. The prophet would say, "What kind of neighborliness is this?" Lahab's wife had made it a practice to cast thorns at his door at night, so that when he came out they would stick in his feet.
The 110th surah, called
Help!
is the only place in the Quran where one of the prophet's foes is condemned by name. Madudi explains.
Muhammad's uncle, Abu Lahab, has character traits that became the basis of his condemnation. To understand this, it is necessary to understand Arabian society of that time.
Our Islamic tutor goes on to claim,
In ancient days, chaos and confusion prevailed. Bloodshed and plunder reigned throughout Arabia.
Actually, that was not true. Chaos, bloodshed, and plunder prevailed after Islam, not before. When the truth hurts, Muslims lie, even if they have to condemn Arabs. Caught in this duplicity, Madudi contradicted himself.
One's clansman protected his own. It was called Sila Remi, good treatment of the kindred. It was the most highly esteemed moral value of Arabian society. Breaking off connections with the kindred was regarded as a great sin.
If that is true, Muhammad became an egregious sinner, for his doctrine and terrorist raids pitted Arab against Arab. Squabbles over money led directly to a murderous civil war.
In his enmity of Islam, Abu Lahab broke the peace.
How Lahab's taunting can be condemned in light of Muhammad's murderous rage is an enigma. In my opinion, Muhammad's real motivation for lashing out against Uncle Lahab was that he had what he coveted. While both men were descendants of Abdul Muttalib, the inheritance bypassed the prophet and went to Lahab. To add insult to injury, when Muhammad's father died, the orphaned prophet resented the fact that he was neither adopted nor supported by old Uncle Abu. Madudi says,
Uncle Lahab was expected to look after the nephews as one of his own children, but this man in his hostility to Islam and love of kufr trampled all the Arab traditions underfoot.
Now, Mr. Muslim scholar, you've got the cart before the camel, and in so doing you've missed the entire purpose of Islam. Let me explain. Abu Lahab didn't trample on Arab tradition on account of Islam as Muhammad and our esteemed scholar would have you believe. There was no Islam back in the time the orphan needed help. Further, Muhammad had married money 25 years prior to this altercation. While it wasn't the gravy train of the religious scam, the wannabe prophet hardly needed to be adopted now. But now is the operative word. Back when Muhammad was an orphan boy, nobody wanted him, and nobody included the man who had it all, his uncle. Because Lahab had rejected and abandoned the boy, Muhammad was carried off into the desert. His words scream out to us today, telling us that he was abused. Fire and scalding water were the instruments of the torment, along with insufficient food, requiring him to forage in the garbage. The Quran is our witness to those terrible times. Islam is the result. When the prophet in training returned to Mecca at 6, his mother died, a mother who had seen neither hide nor hair of him, a mother who had failed to protect him, a mother who had abandoned him. It was little wonder Muhammad craved female attention, little wonder he married a woman his mother's age, a woman who could take care of him. And it is little wonder Muhammad treated women as half-human. The plight of Muslim women today remains a haunting echo of his troubled past. Pent-up rage can be a powerful force with enduring consequences, and so it would be. When Muhammad was 50, he took his best friend's 6-year-old daughter. He would later tell her,
"The things I love most are fragrant smells and beautiful women."
He embraced incest, stealing his adoptive son's bride. The Quran would claim that his wives were dispensable, that Allah would simply give him a new batch of virgins if they didn't behave. Then, when Muhammad rebuked his child wife's criticism for collecting an ever-increasing number of concubines, there was another handy Quranic scripture, to which Aisha said,
Your Lord surely seems eager to gratify your desires.
After Muhammad's mother died, Abu Lahab rejected the vulnerable boy a second time. The 6-year-old Muhammad was forced into the arms of a slave. Can you imagine the pain, the envy, the rage? His father's brother was heir to the religious scam of the Hajj, the Ramadan fair, and the tax. He was custodian of the Kaaba, Allah's house. Muhammad had nothing. He cried out to his uncle, begged his uncle to protect him, shelter him, feed him. But no. 2 more miserable years passed before Muhammad's grandfather, Abdul Muttalib, finally acknowledged the destitute child. But even then this was disturbing, for Ishaq said that Abu Muttalib
would make him sit beside him on his bed and would stroke him with his hand. He was extremely fond of him and used to constantly pet him.
Grandpa died a couple of years later, and the Prophet was handed off to Abu Talib, another uncle. Like Abu Lahab, he was his father's brother. Muhammad was not yet 10 years old, and by either death or choice he had been rejected or abandoned by his mother twice, his father, a Bedouin woman, a slave, Uncle Abu Lahab twice, and then by Grandpa Muttalib. Just the suspicion that Uncle Talib would reject him brought the 45-year-old man to tears. Muhammad had a terrible life and a tormented childhood. It's not hard to see why he was so insecure, why he was filled with rage, why his Quran reflected his animosity, and why Uncle Abu Lahab became the focus of his pain, the one man singled out by name for condemnation. While the Khan was promoted by Khadijah, much of the motivation of Islam can be laid at Uncle Abu Lahab's feet. In Tabari, Muhammad in Mecca, I found a hadith that I have combined with another like it from Ibn Ishaq.
One day the messenger mounted Al-Safa,
his favorite she-camel,
and called out, "If I were to tell you that behind the hill there was an enemy host ready to fall upon you this evening, would you believe me?" "Certainly," the Meccans replied. He said, "I am a warner in the face of terrible doom." Abu Lahab responded, "If I were to accept your religion, what would I get?" The Prophet said, "You would get what the others will get,
which is submission to me."
Abu Lahab said, "Is there no preference or distinction for me?" The Prophet replied, "What do you want?" Lahab said, "May this religion perish, in which I and all other people should be equal." The Prophet said, "Then I warn you that you are heading for a torment." Then Allah revealed, "The power of Abu Lahab will perish," reciting to the end of the verse.
There was no room for a second king in Islam. Muhammad would not rest until he reigned alone. Before Muhammad's proclamation of prophethood, he married 2 of his 3 daughters to Lahab's son, Utbah and Utaybah. It's odd that a prophet would be so short-sighted as to marry his own flesh to such a repugnant man. But Muhammad was always more profiteer than prophet. There is but one reason why he would give his daughters to someone he despised. Abu Lahab, like Khadijah, had money, power, and prestige, things that could be usurped through arranged marriages. After Muhammad began inviting the Meccans to view him as Allah's prophet, as the real heir to the Hajj, Ramadan fair, religious tax, and Kaaba custodianship, Abu Lahab said to both of his sons,
"I forbid myself seeing and meeting you until you divorce the daughters of Muhammad."
Muhammad was horning in on Daddy's business, so both divorced their wives.
Tabari. Utaybah became so nasty that he came before the Prophet and said, "I repudiate Islam." Then he spat at him, but his spittle did not fall on him. The Prophet prayed, "O Allah, subject him to the power of a dog from among your dogs."
If the Lord were really the all-forgiving deity Muhammad claimed him to be, he wouldn't condemn his prophet's cousin to be eaten by dogs for a little miscast spittle. But if Allah was who Muhammad knew him to be, the devil symbolized by the black stone of the Kaaba, he was something to be cast at those who stood between him and the things he coveted. This hadith was just part of the act. According to Abdul Bar,
afterwards Utaybah, accompanied by his father,
Uncle Abu Lahab,
on a journey to Syria, During the trip, their caravan halted at a place that, according to local people,